Rihanna grew up in a three-bedroom house in Barbados. Today, she is worth nearly $1.5 billion. But her empire wasn't built by music alone. Keep watching as we trace the unlikely discovery, the risky decisions, and the business moves that transformed a teenage singer into one of the world's most powerful brands. Let's start where it starts. St. Michael Parish, Barbados, February 20th, 1988. That's where and when Robin Rihanna Fenty was born, in the most populated parish on the island. Home to the capital, Bridgetown. She was raised on a street called Westbury New Road, a modest street, nothing fancy, in a house her family shared as they got by. Her mother, Monica, worked as an accountant. Her father, Ronald, worked as a warehouse supervisor. And as a kid, Rihanna would help her dad sell clothes off a stall on the street. That's the actual starting point of this story. Not a stage, not a studio, but a clothing stall in Bridgetown. Home life wasn't easy. Her father struggled with alcohol and crack cocaine addiction, and it put a serious strain on her parents' marriage. She's talked about this openly. The arguments, the tension, the toll it took. Her parents split when she was 14. Rihanna has said she tried to physically get between her mother and father during their worst moments just to break things up. She found her escape in music at Combermere School. She teamed up with two classmates and started a girl group. Nothing official yet, just teenagers singing together after school. She'd grown up on reggae, but also on American R&B. She loved Whitney Houston, she loved Mariah Carey, and she'd win a high school talent show singing one of Mariah's songs. Then, in 2003, everything changed because of one vacation. American record producer Evan Rogers was in Barbados with his wife, and friends introduced him to Rihanna and her group. She auditioned for him right there on the island. Rogers later described the moment plainly. He said the minute she walked into the room, the other two girls didn't exist for him. That's the entire turning point of her life, captured in one sentence from the man who found her. She didn't wait around after that. At 16, she left Barbados and moved to Connecticut to live with Rogers and his wife while they worked on a demo. Same year, she signed with Def Jam Recordings, and the man who signed her was Jay-Z himself, who was running the label at the time. She left high school. She left home. She was 16 years old, betting everything on a demo tape. That demo had a song called Pawn to Replay on it, and it became her breakout single. Her first two albums, Music of the Sun in 2005 and A Girl Like Me in 2006, leaned into her Caribbean sound and both cracked the top 10 on the Billboard 200. She was barely out of her teens and already a fixture on American radio. But the label pushed her towards something bigger. Producers like Timbaland and Justin Timberlake helped shift her sound toward mainstream, dance-driven R&B. And that shift produced Umbrella, the song that turned her from a promising new artist into an actual global star. By the time she hit 23, she'd become the youngest artist ever to rack up 10 #1 Billboard hits. 9 Grammy wins would eventually follow. Over 250 million records sold worldwide. Hits like SOS, Disturbia, Only Girl in the World, We Found Love, Diamonds, a run of chart dominance that lasted almost a decade. That's the music side of the story. And by most standards, that alone would be a career. A girl from Bridgetown becomes one of the best-selling artists of the 21st century. That's already an incredible journey. But it's not the part that got her to billions. Music made her famous. It didn't make her a billionaire. What did was a decision she made right around the time most pop stars are told to release another album. She stopped, and she started building something else entirely. Here's where the story stops being a music story. In 2016, Rihanna released Anti. It went on to be a commercial success, but what nobody clocked at the time was that it would be her last album, for at least a decade and counting. No follow-up, no greatest hits victory lap, no arena tour cycle to milk the back catalog. She just stopped releasing music. At the exact moment the industry expected her to cash in hardest, what she did instead was launch a beauty company. In September of 2017, Fenty Beauty hit shelves through a partnership with LVMH's Kendo brands, the same luxury conglomerate. behind Louis Vuitton, Dior, and Sephora's parent relationships. The brand's whole premise was simple and, at the time, radical for the cosmetics industry. It launched with 40 shades of foundation, built specifically to cover skin tones that most beauty companies had ignored for decades. The industry had no idea what was about to hit it. Using New York Fashion Week as a launchpad, Fenty pulled in a reported $72 million in sales in its very first month. Within its first 2 months on shelves, the brand had crossed $100 million in revenue, a number that had never been touched by a celebrity beauty line before. Time magazine put Fenty's foundation range on its list of the year's top inventions. This wasn't a celebrity slapping her name on someone else's formula for a licensing check either. Rihanna owned half the company outright, a straight 50-50 partnership with LVMH, one of the largest luxury groups on the planet. That distinction matters more than almost anything else in this story. Most artists who put out a fragrance or a makeup line get royalties. A cut of sales paid out like a songwriter gets paid for a hit record. Rihanna got equity. She owned the thing itself. That's the difference between being rich and being a billionaire. And it's the exact pivot this story hinges on. A pop star with royalty deals can make tens of millions a year and still never approach 10 figures because royalties are income, not ownership. Equity compounds. Equity multiplies when the whole brand grows. And Fenty Beauty grew fast, becoming one of the most recognized names in cosmetics within just a few years, valued by some estimates as high as $2.8 billion at its peak. She didn't stop at makeup. In 2018, she launched Savage X Fenty, a lingerie and apparel line that took the same playbook: inclusive sizing, inclusive marketing, splashy runway-style shows, and applied it to underwear. By 2021, Savage X Fenty had raised $115 million in a funding round that pushed the company's valuation past $1 billion on its own. Rihanna held roughly 30% of that company. She eventually stepped back from the CEO chair in 2023 to become executive chair, bringing in outside leadership to run day-to-day operations, while she kept strategic control, the kind of move a founder makes when they're thinking about a company's long-term life, not just its launch buzz. There was a third venture too, a high-fashion line simply called Fenty, done in partnership with LVMH starting in 2019, marking her as the first woman to head an original luxury house under that conglomerate. That particular venture struggled against the reality of the fashion retail market, and it was paused in 2021, pending better conditions, as LVMH put it at the time. Not every bet paid off, but the two that did, the beauty line and the lingerie line, were enough on their own to change the entire shape of her finances. By August of 2021, Forbes made it official. Rihanna had crossed the billion-dollar threshold, becoming one of the very few musicians in history, and at the time, the youngest self-made woman in America to hit that number. And here's the detail that tells you everything about how she actually thinks about money. When asked how she celebrated becoming a billionaire, she told The Cut she'd ordered Chinese food, admitting she usually gets pork fried rice. But that day was chicken fried rice. No party, no yacht, dinner and a joke about fried rice for a milestone almost nobody in music history had ever reached. She's also been candid about how strange the whole label feels to her. In interviews since, she's admitted the idea of being called a billionaire still feels foreign, not something she sits around thinking about day to day, despite it defining how the entire world now sees her. What's remarkable is the arithmetic behind all of it. She hadn't dropped an album in years. Her music catalog kept earning steady streaming and licensing royalties, sure, but that alone never explains a billion-dollar jump. The jump came from equity stakes in two companies she helped build from the ground up, at a moment when she chose ownership over another round of touring. That's the mechanism. That's how a Bajan girl who used to help her father sell clothes on a street stall ended up with a stake in a global beauty conglomerate, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. While the business side of her life was compounding in Los Angeles boardrooms, something else was happening 4,000 miles away, back on the island she grew up on. And this part of the story is just as important to understanding billions. Because it's not only about money, it's about what that money and that fame turned her into back home. In 2017, the Barbadian government renamed the street she grew up on. Westbury New Road became Rihanna Drive, a permanent landmark now, one that draws fans from around the world who want to stand where her story actually started. A year later, in 2018, Barbados named her Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary, officially tasking her with promoting education, tourism, and investment for the country. Then came the night that turned all of that into something historic. On the night of November 29th into November 30th, 2021, Barbados formally cut ties with Queen Elizabeth II as head of state, becoming a republic for the first time in its history after 55 years of independence. Dame Sandra Mason was sworn in as the country's first ever president, and in the middle of that ceremony, Prime Minister Mia Mottley did something nobody quite expected. She declared Rihanna a national hero of Barbados. Watch the footage from that night, and you can see Rihanna hesitate before standing up, smiling under her mask, clearly not expecting to be called forward the way she was. Mottley told her directly to come up and join the officials on stage. Then, in front of the new republic's first ever president, Mottley delivered the honor with words that are now etched into Barbadian history, telling Rihanna to continue to shine like a diamond and bring honor to your nation by your words, by your actions. The title that comes with national hero status is the Right Excellent, and it made her only the 11th person in Barbadian history to receive the honor since it was created, and just the second living person to hold it at the time, alongside cricket legend Garfield Sobers, who was there that night and embraced her on stage. Prince Charles was also in attendance for the ceremony, watching a former warehouse supervisor's daughter get named a national hero of the country he was there representing the departing monarchy from. Think about the scale of that for a second. This is a country of under 300,000 people creating its highest possible civilian honor on the single most important night in its modern political history, and choosing to hand it to a pop star turned makeup mogul who grew up on one of its side streets. Not a former prime minister, not a war hero, Rihanna. And she's never treated that connection as a formality. Her business ventures are laced with references to home. Product names like Island Ting and Bajan Gial show up across her Fenty lines, direct callbacks to Barbadian slang and culture. Her charitable arm, the Clara Lionel Foundation, is literally named after her grandparents, Clara and Lionel Braithwaite, and it's funneled money into disaster relief, healthcare, and education efforts that have repeatedly benefited Barbados directly. This is the part of the billion story that doesn't show up on a balance sheet. Ownership stakes and company valuations tell you what she's worth. The National Hero Ceremony tells you what she means to an entire country that watched a local girl become, by any measure, the most famous person to ever come out of their 14-mile-wide island. By the early 2020s, Rihanna's story had picked up a whole new thread, one that ran parallel to the business empire and somehow ended up amplifying it. She'd been in a relationship with rapper A$AP Rocky since 2020, and in May of 2022, the couple welcomed their first child, a son named Rizza. They were not and still aren't legally married, but they've built a family that's grown since. A second son, Riot, followed, and a third child arrived in 2025. Then came February 2023, and the moment that turned motherhood and stardom into the same headline. Rihanna hadn't performed live since 2019, nearly 4 years off any stage. She agreed to headline the Apple Music Super Bowl halftime show at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. Her first live performance since giving birth to her first son roughly 9 months earlier. She later admitted she'd hesitated when she got the offer, telling reporters at the pre-show press conference that she'd questioned whether she should be making major decisions like this right now, given she was only 3 months postpartum at the time she accepted. But she said becoming a mother had given her a different kind of confidence, the sense that she could take on anything, and that the Super Bowl stage was too big an opportunity to pass up. What happened during that 13-minute set became one of the most talked about halftime shows in recent memory, not just for the medley of hits she tore through, stuff like We Found Love, Diamonds, Work, and Umbrella suspended on a hydraulic platform above the field, but because of what fans noticed about her body. Partway through, she rested a hand on her stomach. She did it again near the end. Within the hour, her representative confirmed to press outlets what millions had already guessed live on air. She was pregnant with her second child, making her the first woman to headline a Super Bowl halftime show while pregnant. The reaction was immediate and enormous. Fans flooded social media in real time, with one widely shared post capturing the astonishment perfectly, marveling that she did whole halftime show alone when she pregnant. Major outlets scrambled to confirm the news within the hour. It became one of those pop culture moments where a performance and a personal milestone collided in front of over 100 million live viewers, and neither one overshadowed the other. It's worth pointing out what she didn't get paid for that stage. Halftime performers at the Super Bowl don't receive an appearance fee from the NFL. The trade-off is exposure on the biggest broadcast night in American television. And for Rihanna, the value of that exposure landed directly on brands she owned outright, not just a label's back catalog. Every eyeball on that stage was, in effect, another data point for Fenty. That's really the through line for this entire chapter of her life. Family, fame, and business, all moving together instead of pulling against each other. She wasn't touring behind a new album. She wasn't grinding through a press cycle for a movie. She showed up once at the biggest stage in the country, pregnant, wealthy beyond the reach of most entertainers, and let one performance do the work that used to take years of album cycles. The girl who left Barbados at 16 with a demo tape was now dictating the terms of her own comeback, on her own schedule, entirely on her own terms. So where does all of this leave things now? As of the most recent estimates, Rihanna's net worth sits somewhere between $1.4 and $1.7 billion, depending on which valuation model you're looking at. Forbes puts the figure around $1.4 billion, driven overwhelmingly by her stakes in Fenty Beauty and Savage X Fenty, rather than anything tied directly to music. The breakdown is telling. Her 50% ownership in Fenty Beauty alone has been valued at roughly $700 million. Her stake in Savage X Fenty adds somewhere between $250 and $300 million more. Add in real estate. She and Rocky share a home in Beverly Hills, reportedly worth close to $14 million, on top of other properties she's bought and sold over the years. And you get a portfolio built almost entirely on ownership rather than a paycheck. It hasn't all been smooth sailing lately either. Through 2024 and into 2025, her estimated wealth actually dipped by roughly $400 million, something Forbes tied to a plateau in Fenty Beauty sales after years of explosive growth, a tougher retail environment in China, and a broader cooling in the celebrity beauty market that had once seemed unstoppable. Reports in 2025 even suggested LVMH had explored selling its stake in the beauty brand altogether, with total company valuations settling somewhere between $1.5 and $2 billion. Still enormous, but down from the near $3 billion the brand touched at its peak. None of that has knocked her out of the billionaire tier. She remains the second richest female musician in the world, trailing only Taylor Swift, and she's still widely counted among the handful of female artists from her era, alongside names like Beyoncé, who've crossed into 10-figure territory at all. What's remarkable is how she got there compared to almost everyone else on that shortlist. Most build wealth through stadium tours and album royalties stacked up over decades. She essentially walked away from that model at its peak right after and bet everything on owning companies instead of collecting paychecks from them. That bet is still playing out in real time. Fenty Beauty's cooling sales numbers are a reminder that even a category-defining brand faces real market pressure once the initial hype settles. Competitors caught up, inclusive shade ranges became an industry standard rather than a novelty, and Chinese consumer spending patterns shifted in ways LVMH itself has publicly acknowledged as a challenge. Savage X Fenty has had its own turbulence too, including some executive turnover that Forbes flagged as part of the reason for the recent dip in her overall valuation. None of that erases what's already been built. It just means the next chapter of this business empire is still being written, the same way her music career kept evolving album to album back when that was still the main story. And that, in the end, is really what connects every piece of this journey. A kid helping her dad sell clothes on a street in Bridgetown. A teenager discovered on a producer's Caribbean vacation. A 16-year-old who left school and flew to Connecticut with nothing but a demo tape and a Def Jam contract. A chart-topping act who then walked away from another album cycle to bet on owning a beauty company outright. A national hero standing on a stage in her home country the night it became a republic. A mother who turned a Super Bowl stage into a pregnancy announcement and a business victory lap in the same 13 minutes. Each one of those moments builds on the last, and none of them happen without the one before it. She hasn't put out a new album in almost a decade, and by every account, fans are still waiting. But whatever comes next, another record, another product line, another stage she chooses to walk onto when she's good and ready, it'll be built on the same foundation the entire journey has run on since that stall on a Bridgetown street. Ownership, patience, and betting on herself before anyone else did.